Max Carter stood over the ancient Eryxian artifact, his fingers lightly tracing the smooth, blackened surface. The object was smaller than he had expected, no bigger than a baseball, but its weight was extraordinary. An almost imperceptible hum of energy emanated from it. It had been buried in the ruins of a long-forgotten city on a remote moon, tucked away from the eyes of the Federation for centuries. Now, it was his responsibility to decode its secrets. The artifact had resisted every attempt to open it, every traditional method of analysis. The Federation's brightest minds, sent to decipher it, had been stumped. That was when Max was brought in, not for his intellect, but for his experience in unorthodox situations. Once a decorated soldier in the Federation's elite special forces, Max now worked as a consultant for their archaeological division. He had been to the front lines of battles no one talked about, faced down enemies more dangerous than the Devourer itself. His team had been working around the clock to crack the encrypted signal inside the artifact. But so far, all they had was a tangle of ancient symbols and fluctuating energy readings. That was, until today. The breakthrough came not from the technology itself, but from the organic material embedded in the core of the artifact, something that looked like an alien seed, pulsing with light. Max watched as the device finally hummed to life, the symbols rearranging themselves into a pattern that was unmistakable. Human. Not just any human language. This was ancient, a dialect of humanity long forgotten, buried beneath millennia of galactic history. The message that formed on the screen sent chills down his spine. To those who find this, the truth must be told. We were here first. You are not the first, but the last. Max froze, staring at the words. It didn't make sense. Humans had never been considered an elder species in the galaxy. The truth they had uncovered was more than just an archaeological find. It was a revelation, one that could shatter everything the galaxy thought it knew. Max stared at the screen, the words flashing in his mind like a warning beacon. We were here first. You are not the first, but the last. His heart pounded in his chest. This wasn't just an archaeological discovery. This was something far deeper, something that suggested humanity's place in the galaxy wasn't what anyone had believed. The team around him had grown silent, their faces illuminated by the glow of the screens. They too had seen the message, but none of them seemed to fully grasp the weight of it. Max knew what they were thinking. A mistake, a hoax, perhaps a message left by a race long extinct. But Max had lived too many years on the frontier of galactic knowledge to dismiss anything as simple. He wasn't ready to let this go, not after everything he'd seen in his career: wars, betrayals, cosmic anomalies. There was something much bigger at play here, and he needed to know what. We need to cross-reference this with known records, Max said, breaking the silence. There's got to be something in Federation archives that matches this. This can't be the first time humans have been mentioned in ancient texts. Professor Alyssa Vance, the lead linguist on the team, hesitated before speaking. Max, I've done the cross-referencing. There's nothing. No historical documentation, no ancient records linking humanity to the galaxy's early history. It's like we simply appeared, a few thousand years ago, just as a younger species. But what if we didn't? Max replied. He wasn't ready to let the Federation's clean, accepted history control the narrative. He turned toward the communications officer. Send a report back to the Council. I need clearance to access the restricted archives. I want to dig deeper. Alyssa's face turned pale. Max, you're asking for trouble. The Council's never approved access to those archives. You're asking to dig into classified human history. History they don't want us to uncover. Max's gaze hardened. Then let them stop me. As the team scrambled to gather more data, Max felt an unsettling feeling settle in his gut. The more they uncovered, the more certain he became that the history of humanity had been erased, for a reason. And soon, that reason would come looking for them. The days blurred together as Max and his team worked around the clock, pushing boundaries they had never even considered before. But the more they dug, the more unsettling their findings became. The artifact was only the beginning. As they began accessing Federation archives, old reports, and hidden caches of data, one truth became clear. Humanity's role in the galaxy had been deliberately erased. The restricted archives Max had fought to gain access to were filled with encrypted files, but buried among them were fragments of ancient human records, scribbled notes, destroyed research papers, and distorted holograms, each one pointing to a truth the Federation was desperate to keep hidden. And the more Max read, the more a chilling realization settled in his mind. Humanity hadn't just been another species. They were the architects of life itself. One of the most staggering discoveries came from a file labeled Eryxian First Contact. The document chronicled humanity's early interactions with the Eryxians, a race of highly advanced beings who had once ruled the galaxy. At first, the two species had exchanged knowledge, but over time, the humans' rapid technological growth began to eclipse that of the Eryxians. In the document, a passage stood out like a beacon. "We, the Eryxians, are no longer the masters of the stars. The humans have surpassed us. Their creation, their understanding of time and space, it is unlike anything we have known. We fear that their rise will end in the end of all things." Max sat back, his breath coming in short bursts. The Eryxians had feared humanity's potential, but it was clear now. They were not the first sentient species in the galaxy. Humanity had come long before them. They had seeded the stars with life, shaping civilizations and technologies that would one day far exceed the capacity of the galaxy's current inhabitants. But the most unsettling discovery came next, a report from a classified Federation mission, sealed for centuries, detailing a war unlike any in history, a war that had wiped out much of humanity. The cause? An unnamed force, something ancient and monstrous, something that had destroyed the first human empire. The Devourer. Max felt a cold shiver run down his spine. The Devourer had never been mentioned in any history textbooks. Until now. The more Max uncovered, the more the galaxy's official history seemed like a carefully constructed lie. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, had been erasing humanity's true legacy from existence. The Eryxians' warnings, the Federation's redacted files, and the ancient relics all pointed toward a terrifying truth. Humanity wasn't just part of the galaxy's past. They had been the dominant force, shaping civilizations, engineering life, and even battling threats beyond comprehension. Max's growing obsession with the truth soon drew the attention of the Federation. It wasn't long before his team was summoned to a high-level meeting at the Council's headquarters, an opulent tower suspended above the bustling capital of the Federation. The members of the Council, usually composed of representatives from various species, seemed unusually tight-lipped as Max and his team arrived. Councillor Varric Althros, the charismatic and cunning politician from the heavily industrialized planet Draxos, was waiting for them. He had always been a fixture of the Federation's upper echelons, but Max had never trusted him. There was something in Varric's cold, calculating demeanor that unnerved him. "Dr. Carter," Varric said smoothly, greeting him with a tight smile. "I trust your investigation is progressing well. The Federation's resources are at your disposal, of course." Max didn't miss the insinuation behind his words. "I found something troubling," he said, refusing to beat around the bush. "The history of humanity. What's been recorded, what's been taught, it's incomplete. It's as if someone erased a whole chapter from galactic history." Varric's eyes narrowed slightly. "I'm afraid I don't follow." Max slid a data pad across the table, the report he had compiled. "I've uncovered evidence of an ancient war. A war that nearly destroyed humanity, against something called the Devourer. It's not in any public record. In fact, the war itself has been completely erased from history." Varric's smile faltered. For just a moment, Max saw a flicker of something dangerous behind the politician's composed exterior. "The Devourer," Varric repeated, his voice a touch too soft. I believe there's been a misunderstanding, Max. We've been through this before. Those records are classified for a reason. Max leaned forward, his voice hardening. If this misunderstanding could cost the galaxy its future, then we need to address it now. Varric's smile returned, but it was no longer warm. I'll make sure the Council is made aware of your concerns. In the meantime, please, be cautious. The Federation has interests in preserving order. Max didn't miss the threat hidden behind the words. As he left the meeting, a deep unease settled in his chest. Varric knew more than he was letting on, and if humanity's ancient legacy was truly a threat to the status quo, the Federation would go to any lengths to keep it buried. The next few days were a blur of tension, with every step Max took deeper into the mystery seeming to lead to more danger. The Federation, now aware of his findings, began to tighten its grip on his team. Surveillance increased, data was wiped, and his access to critical files was revoked. But Max couldn't stop now. Too many lives were at stake. His instincts told him the Devourer wasn't just a theoretical threat. It was real, and it was waking up. The breakthrough came when Alyssa Vance, the team's lead linguist, cracked a final portion of the ancient human data. The Devourer wasn't just a force of nature. It was an entity, a cosmic anomaly that existed outside of time, capable of consuming entire realities. Its hunger was relentless, and its origins were tied to the very fabric of the galaxy's creation. The original humans, the ones who had created the galaxy's first civilizations, had battled the Devourer with their most advanced weapons, ones that manipulated time itself. But those weapons had been lost, the last remnants sealed away to prevent the Devourer's return. In one of the decrypted reports, a chilling entry from a high-ranking Federation officer named General Roland described the final days of humanity's last stand against the Devourer. The chronolock is the key. Without it, we are all doomed. The Devourer is not a force that can be fought with conventional arms. It is time itself that must be sealed, or it will consume us all. Max's heart raced as he read the words. The chronolock, the artifact humanity had used to imprison the Devourer in another time, another dimension. And now, the lock was failing. The galaxy had no idea that the time barrier holding the Devourer in check was weakening, but Max knew it would only be a matter of time before the entity broke free. Where are the pieces? Max whispered aloud. He turned to his team, his eyes intense. The chronolock is scattered across the galaxy. We need to find it, before it's too late. Alyssa nodded grimly. We have no time to waste. The Devourer, it's coming. Max's pulse quickened. The galaxy's fate was hanging by a thread, and the only ones who could stop it were the very humans whose legacy had been erased from history. Max's heart hammered as the weight of their mission settled in. The Devourer was real, and it was coming. But the chronolock, the only thing that could stop it, was broken into pieces, scattered across the galaxy. And without those pieces, there would be no way to prevent the annihilation of everything. The first clue came from an ancient cryptic map hidden within one of the Federation's most restricted archives, an archive that had only been accessible because of Max's relentless persistence. The map pinpointed 5 key locations, each one tied to an ancient human colony or outpost, places that had long since been abandoned or buried in the aftermath of the Devourer's war. But retrieving the pieces wouldn't be simple. The Federation's control over these areas was tenuous at best, and each location was either heavily guarded by powerful galactic forces or lost to time. To make matters worse, Varric Althros, still lurking behind the scenes, had learned of their efforts and was now making moves to intercept them. Max knew that Varric had his own designs on the chronolock's power. Whether he planned to use it to reshape the galaxy or to destroy it altogether, Max couldn't afford to let him get his hands on it. The first piece was located on the dying world of Neris Prime, a once thriving human colony that had been wiped out in an invasion by the Thraxians, a brutal, xenophobic species known for their ruthless campaigns of conquest. The Thraxians still controlled the planet's surface, and the piece of the chronolock was rumored to be buried in the ruins of an old human city, now overrun by hostile forces. Max stood at the command console of their ship, staring at the coordinates as Alyssa and the rest of the team prepared for their next move. "We leave at first light," Max ordered. "No more delays. We get in, we get the piece, and we get out. If we don't, the Devourer will make sure we don't get a second chance." As the ship's engines powered up, Max's thoughts drifted to the other pieces, each one a potential trap. But he wasn't about to back down. The galaxy needed to know the truth about humanity, even if it cost him everything. The journey to Neris Prime was as brutal as Max had expected. The planet, once a jewel of human expansion, was now little more than a barren, war-torn husk. The Thraxians had left it in ruins after their conquest, and any attempt to reclaim the surface had ended in failure. To make matters worse, the piece of the chronolock was rumored to be buried beneath the remains of an old fortress, now under constant surveillance by Thraxian warbands. Max and his team had barely set foot on the planet when they encountered their first major obstacle, a Thraxian patrol, heavily armed, and on high alert. Their ship, a sleek Federation recon vessel, had been cloaked, but it wouldn't stay hidden for long. "We've got incoming," Alyssa said, her voice tight as she scanned the radar. "If we don't move now, we'll be spotted." Max nodded. "Gear up. We move fast and quiet. The longer we stay here, the higher the chance Varric catches up." The plan was simple, but execution was always the challenge. They would make their way to the fortress, retrieve the chronolock fragment, and get out, preferably without attracting attention. It was a small window, and the clock was ticking. As they navigated through the shadowed remains of the city, Max's mind raced. They were only one piece in, and already the odds were against them. If Varric wasn't directly following them, he was certainly pulling strings behind the scenes, preparing for his own move. The Thraxians proved to be less of a challenge than expected. Their brutality and disregard for strategy worked in Max's favor. They stormed through the city in force, unaware of the small group of humans silently moving through the crumbling streets. Reaching the fortress was another story. The entrance was locked, sealed by an ancient security system far beyond what the Thraxians could understand. But Max had been trained for moments like this. With a few quick commands, the security system was overridden. As the door slid open, revealing the darkened interior, the hairs on the back of Max's neck stood on end. They were close, so close. But the moment they stepped inside, Max felt the undeniable presence of a new threat, a shadow he hadn't anticipated. A voice, cold and calculating, echoed through the chamber. "I was wondering when you'd show up, Dr. Carter." Varric. Max's blood ran cold. Varric had beat them here, and now there was no escape. The air in the darkened chamber thickened as Varric Althros stepped out from the shadows, his icy gaze locking onto Max. The last time Max had seen him, Varric had been nothing more than a scheming politician. But now, in the heart of an ancient, ruined fortress, surrounded by the wreckage of a lost human legacy, he felt something far more dangerous in the man's presence. Varric's smile was one of superiority, as if he'd already won. "Well, well, Dr. Carter," Varric said, his voice smooth and unshaken. "I must admit, I didn't expect you to make it this far. But then again, humans have a knack for surviving against impossible odds, don't they?" Max's grip tightened on the rifle slung across his back, but he didn't draw it. "Not yet. You knew what we were looking for," he said, his voice low, measured. "You knew about the chronolock." Varric chuckled. "Knew about it? I've known about it long before you started digging around. The Federation has been guarding its secret for centuries. Humanity's role in the galaxy, your true role, it's too dangerous for anyone to know." Max's stomach churned. "That's why you've been suppressing everything, isn't it? You're afraid the galaxy will find out that humans were the architects of life itself, that the Devourer was your legacy to protect, and you used the Federation to bury the truth." Varric's smile twisted, but there was no humor in it now. The truth is, Dr. Carter, the galaxy cannot handle the truth. If people knew what humanity once was, they would want to replicate it, control it. But if they succeed, they'll bring about their own end. The Devourer isn't just a monster. It's the price of your species' ambition. Max's eyes narrowed. And you think you can stop it? By controlling the chronolock. You're as deluded as the rest of them. Varric stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. The galaxy will never accept the truth. The best we can do is bury it. I will ensure humanity's legacy is erased forever, along with anyone who stands in my way. The finality of his words hung heavy in the air. Before Max could react, Varric's forces surged forward from the shadows, their weapons drawn. The battle that followed was a blur of gunfire, chaos, and shattered stone. Max fought with everything he had, but as he fired on the attackers, his mind kept racing back to the truth. The chronolock's final fragment was now within reach. But at what cost? As the dust settled, Max stood amidst the ruins, his body bruised, his mind exhausted. Varric was gone, vanished in the chaos of battle, but his words lingered, a chilling reminder that the truth of humanity's origins would never fully be revealed. In the end, Max's memory of the ancient human legacy and the weapon that could stop the Devourer would fade. The galaxy would return to its normal, ignorant state. But in the quiet moments before sleep claimed him, Max couldn't shake the feeling that humanity would rise again one day. History was never truly gone. It was simply waiting to be rediscovered. And when it was, the galaxy would remember. But it would be too late.